And Gunjiri, you have a report here in the Standard on page 10, hostility to media rife in counties. So the CPJ, with its committee to protect journalists, is saying that over the past 4 months they have received reports of about 20 incidents of harassment and assault against journalists. So this is coming in the back of, remember the sentiment, the comments by the president referring to meat wrappers, the journalists who were assaulted by GSU officers. It appears to be this sort of narrative, this sort of thinking and regard for journalists that is sinking slowly and slowly into society. To see somebody open fire on journalists coming at demonstration, it is something that is seemingly becoming okay to look at them at us as journalists in a certain way.
Okay, two things. One, there was no case. I think we're making a mistake by trying to distinguish that he was shooting at journalists. He was shooting at a crowd of people that was ahead of him. For me, the fact that he actually shot at anyone
is wrong.
Yeah? For me, that's my... Whether, you see, we are trying to make it look like because it was journalists, it was wrong. For me, the issue is that he was shooting at some unarmed Kenyans who were demonstrating. Now, the fact that there were journalists in that crowd is, for me, and again, this is my problem with how media reports stories. So we've made that story about him shooting journalists, but in essence what he actually shot was demonstrators, including journalists. And for me, that's my problem. We've tried to make it an Osono and journalist story, while essentially what Osono did was shoot members of the public. He should never have done that. He should be in court. I agree with Gadara completely. I mean, it's not...
But
the fact that he's a licensed...
Yeah, let me read this for you. The Rift Valley Regional Commissioner Osman Warfa says that it had to take their officers to rescue the journalists. So even the officials who are on the ground, the officers there, are conceding that at the end of the day it appeared to have been him shooting at the journalists.
But then what I'm asking, the government speaking, I believe what the government has said.
Of course, you believe what the government has said. What I'm asking myself is, that story was that demonstrators, there were demonstrators in land that is associated with Osono. So what I ask myself in that entire story, where are the demonstrators in that entire story? So we have journalists, we have Osono, we have police coming to rescue the journalists. Where are the demonstrators in that story?
So are you
what I'm saying, what I'm asking myself, what I'm telling myself, what I'm asking about that particular coverage of that story. And maybe this is just us splitting hairs, because we are all agreeing that what Osono did was wrong. What I'm saying is that story was actually about demonstrators against...
It was, but you have an official here confirming that the shooting was aimed at the
journalists. So what were the journalists covering?
He went on, yes, the
journalists were covering the protesters.
The Osono was not shooting the demonstrators.
He was shooting at the journalists.
So he was shooting the messenger, according at least to this particular report.
So we have all agreed we believe in the government.
And actually, yes, actually what is happening
Uganda has said we're going to let it stay.
What is happening is this, for Osono to do that, this is an ODM politician, he's not actually a part of the government. I would not blame him much, because I think a few weeks ago, journalists were victims of a government agency, GSU officers, I mean, somewhere at the coast. So this is just something that is, it's not just rife in the counties, it is rife in Kenya now, that journalists getting attacked.
Okay.
Having said that, I have to admit that some of these things, like the journalism body that has complained is CPJ. I don't know whether we've had a local media entity complaining or maybe saying something about it. And I've always said this about us, is that we don't have very strong media entities actually within. We don't have very strong media entities that actually come up with maybe policies or measures to protect journalists, or come out strongly in the event that journalists are attacked. What we have is a trade union, which is a KUJ, which you guys mention all the time. We don't have a professional body. The other body that we have is Media Council of Kenya, which is with constitution, which is actually a quasi-state body.
Okay.
So this is something that actually is a failure on our side. We need to come out strongly to come up with a strong media entity.
Stronger body.
Yeah,
but I was going to make the point that now, for the second point, when you asked, is there a growing environment where journalists have been attacked? And I think now, to play the devil's advocate, we also need to ask ourselves why. The fight began with national government, right? So the first time it was a national government versus media. Now it's devolved, and it's devolving to not just government, pro-government counties. Even in And you just spoke about politicians shooting at journalists here. You see, what we have actually, what we actually seen is a situation where now journalists are starting to be viewed by government officials in every sphere of the nation, whether it's county or national, as enemies. And the question becomes why?
Well, I mean, the fish rots from the head.
No. But you see, you can't.
Intolerance.
But the guys on the ground, they came from the.
It also means.
Hold on, one at a time.
It also means that we have a situation where a lot of administration structures are viewing media as opposition, and the question becomes why.
Because government then like being held to account.
So media has become
so
opposition.
what if then, you can look at it that way, yes, on one hand, that
yes,
they're overly then being bashed, criticized. On the other hand, is it legit? Is there credence?
This is a point we were making.
Merit?
You see, this is a point we were making.
If
you're going to break a story that you're not sure about and then retract it in a small page somewhere in the middle of the book, okay, I'm going to have a problem with you covering me. Because it means you're going to run with a story before you confirm it, and then when you confirm it, after you have said I was found in some random thingy, you're going to put a retraction on page 5. I'm going to stop you from covering me, period. Which is what a lot of government is actually trying to do, which is wrong. I don't say it's right.
Yeah.
But what they're actually trying to do now, we are having a situation where people are trying to stop media from covering them completely. Why? Because you're not, because you've lost faith that they're going to cover you factually.
Let's move on.
Well, very quickly. I think it's a bit curious for Ngonye to admit that stopping journalists covering them etc. is wrong, and then to seek justification for it. You know, it's wrong. Period. That's
my opinion.
You know, yeah, I'm saying it's wrong. Period. You know, it doesn't matter what you think, whether you like that what they said about you or not. Government should not have the choice of saying that you won't cover me. You know, the government.
His point is on when the media, what have I understood?
If you're going to cover me and factually,
it doesn't matter.
Corrections running, then it gives an indication that they're easy to and fast to run with information
every day,
without counter-checking.
Yeah, but my point is this: it doesn't matter that the government thinks it's being covered badly. It doesn't have a choice to say that it will not be covered.
But you see the problem.
You know, and here's the other thing. Now, let me tell you why that's important. You know, the government is there, operates on a public trust. You know, it shouldn't be saying that the public is saying bad things about me, so therefore, you know, I won't give them information.
Not the public,
or the media is saying, yeah, but the public knows about what government is doing through the press. You know, it can't have. We really cannot. We should not have a situation where the government decides who can and who cannot cover it. If you do that, all you will end up with is propaganda. You know, and let's be, I mean, in the end, if the government has a problem with how it's being covered, it can go to the Media Council. You know,
which you call a policy body.
By the way, the Media Council is a state established organ. It's there. You know, so it can take its complaints there and sort of, it cannot say that it will not allow journalists to cover it.
My understanding of why we sit here on Wednesdays is to actually have a candid conversation about reality. What Kadara is telling me is that we expect government is not going to have a problem being covered factually. So
no, it will have a problem.
Yes,
I'm just saying
so we
can't use that as a reason.
His argument is that is where that contempt
that's where that problem is coming from.
So the argument is, what can the media do on one hand to ensure that they're as factual as possible to get rid of this conflict?
Sophia,
to figure what the root
Gadara cannot argue. You cannot argue that the government must allow itself to be covered, despite the fact that we are accepting that some of the coverage is factual. There has to be a place where they must get together. Because you keep saying must, but the problem is going to happen is, you see what, do you remember Kibaki's security people? You remember the entire time, this is a conversation we need to have here. When Kibaki was president, his security people used to keep media guys how far away from him? It didn't matter how many times we argued they're not supposed to do it. They did it anyway. So we can keep saying they must
can I put in a word?
Can I
put in a word edgewise? I think the government, as it is, the government doesn't have any other. The government has to pass information to the people. It has to use the media. It has to work with the media. It has no choice, because I don't think that even if it decides to use those government barazas or chiefs barazas, I don't think this information will get to the people as much as it would. When it comes to Kibaki, Kibaki's security, even when he was in the opposition, that is how Kibaki used to operate. Yeah. I did mention something I pitched for you that maybe you should join the presidential.
Man, you did that.
Before you do that, I think when you have time, I think I need to invite you to spend maybe 3 or 4 days in the newsroom, because you have a lot of misinformation about how the newsroom operates.
All right.
Then you'll actually understand.
I want to